Hey everyone! I wanted to do this video real quick and send it to your parents so they could show you. Last time that we met last week for the class, it was all about like spending one-on-one time with everyone, so I didn't really get to go over kind of like body language and things we need to remember when we give our speeches. So, well, I'm not going to give a speech, but y'all are going to give a speech. And I went over it a little bit the first class time we had when we were starting to talk about the speeches, but I wanted to kind of review, because sometimes we can kind of take for granted, like we think we know what to do, but then you get up there and you're in front of people and you get nervous. So the biggest thing I would suggest is practicing in front of a mirror until you kind of get comfortable, and then practicing in front of maybe siblings, in front of your parents if you wanted to. So a big thing to remember is when you talk, you want to make eye contact with everyone. You don't want to like hold the paper in front of your face and just kind of read off of it and look up occasionally. That's not what we want to do. We want, when we speak, I'm going to bring a stand so you can put your notes up there if you want to. So it's going to be below you. You're not going to have it in front of your face. So it's going to be kind of around here. It's a music stand. So you'll have your notes right here. If you memorize a speech, then that's great, but it's not required. But I would suggest being so familiar with it that you don't have to look at your notes very often. A lot of times using note cards can be helpful because you can have them right there and they can have like the main points, and you can kind of switch back and forth between those very quickly, or you can have like several set up in front of you. And like turning pages in front of everyone is kind of awkward, makes a lot of noise, so we want to avoid that. Another thing you want to do is avoid what I just did, which is saying or just using any of those little words that we kind of use as filler. It's hard to avoid, and it's not like, I'm not going to take a lot off or anything. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to start marking off all of the uhs and the ums and the so's and the wells and things like that, but it's something to keep in mind. So a lot of you have cameras or phones or iPads or even computers that have a recording device on them, usually phones these days, like this one I'm using. So you could even record yourself. Okay, so you could set it up and you record yourself. I would suggest doing this because when I did a speech class in high school and in college, we didn't have that luxury. So it would be really nice because you can see yourself. You can see how well you're looking at the camera and pretending that it's the audience. You can see if you're using any hand gestures, which it's fine to use hand gestures. I tend to use them a lot. You can make sure that you are not just reading off your notes, but you're, standing up straight. You want to stand up straight. You don't want to be all hunched over like this. You're standing up straight. You want to have a clear, not loud voice. You don't want to yell at people, but we want to be able to understand you, because no mumbling like this, no talking like this, but you want to speak normally and clearly. You don't want to whisper, you don't want to yell. So just a normal talking voice. It's not a big auditorium, so you don't have to speak out too much. Another thing that can be helpful when you're recording is making sure you're doing those things, making sure that the biggest thing is probably just not reading off of your notes too much. Okay, so that's why this is kind of a practice kind of thing. It's important to practice your speech. I know of people that are comfortable enough with speeches once they've given a lot, where they don't necessarily have to practice a lot. But for instance, my dad speaks at my church where I grew up going in Little Rock, and he still gives speeches. He talks in church, and he still practices. No matter, he's been doing it for, I guess, probably 10 years now, but he still gives speeches. He still practices speeches. So don't be cocky, and you want to practice. And if you want to, you can always send me your recordings, and I can critique them, give you little hints and stuff. You can send as many as you want. can't promise that I'll get to them like the same moment that you send, but I'll try to by the end of that day or the next morning. And be sure to send me all of your speeches so I can read over them, because you're getting a grade not only on your speech, but on the your paper as well. Your speech is written down. So be sure to cite your sources, remember, when you're talking, and in your paper. So when you cite your source in your paper, you're going to cite it the way you would speak it. Okay, so instead of like we talked about this, but like in your research paper, you had the parentheses at the end of a sentence or the end of a paragraph with the author where you got your information from. But in your speech, you can say, according to this, or according to Dr. So-and-so, things like that. So some of you don't necessarily have to. I know of two students who are just giving their opinion. So they don't, unless they're looking up something, they don't have to really cite themselves. You don't have to cite yourself. Then you don't have to say anything like according to me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You don't want to be so relaxed when you give your speech. Like, you can have a time like at the end of your speech where you can say, do you have any questions? So after you've given your speech and we've all clapped, you can say, does anyone have any questions? And then people can speak. But you don't, hopefully everyone will be, this is etiquette for the audience now. So not just etiquette for the speaker, but etiquette for the audience. We're going to be respectful and we're not going to say anything. If they say something funny, we can laugh because that's the point. It would be awkward if we didn't. But we shouldn't speak to the speaker when they're talking to us, because that's rude. And questions and comments can be left for afterwards. Another thing that we're going to do when we do give the speeches is I'm going to give everyone an evaluation sheet. So it's kind of like a peer review where you're going to kind of give your opinion about the speech. And a big thing about that is there's going to be room for you to be positive and to show a little bit of creative criticism, which is not being mean. It's just pointing out something that maybe they could improve on. And we're talking about mainly in this part when we review the speech, we're talking about, could they have stood up straighter? Should they have talked louder? Should they have used gestures a little more? Another thing, boys, I'm thinking of you. When you stand up in front of us, no hands in the pockets, no kind of standing like this and just turning all relaxed, all gangster or something. Let's not do that, okay? So when we stand there, we don't want to be all like stiff, hello, my name is so-and-so. We don't want to do that, but we don't want to be too casual, okay? So there's kind of a fine line. Kind of think about like if you were at church, the people that are speaking to you, they might, well, I guess it depends on the church you go to, because I've seen the ones where they're kind of like walking across the stage the whole time. We're not going to do that. And then there's the ones where they're standing there all kind of stiff and really formal. So we're kind of in between. If you have props, you can hold up those props, you know, go like this. Be personable. You don't want to be stiff. You don't want to be like frowning the whole time. Some of you have more serious topics. That doesn't mean that we don't want to see a smile, okay? So you want to be personal. These are people that you know, people that you care about. They're your friends, so you shouldn't feel uncomfortable, and you should have fun, okay? So I hope all of this is helpful. Record yourself. Another thing is we're aiming for 6 minutes, 5 to 6 minute speeches, okay? So another good thing about recording is yourself is you can see how long your speech is. A lot of times speech that we write can very easily be 5 to 6 minutes long. That's pretty normal topic length of speech. However, when we speak too quickly, it doesn't matter how many pages we have, it can really speed up the speech. So you might have really 5 to 6 minutes worth of material, but you speak so quickly, you end up with only 3 minutes. So another great aspect of recording yourself is seeing if you're speaking too quickly. So if you can record yourself we'll look at it. You know, you don't have to send me your first recording. Record yourself a few times. Become comfortable with your speech. You know, do some self-critiquing. If you see that if you're being too formal, you're speaking too softly, if you're slouched over, if you're fumbling with your notes, don't send me that recording. Send me the best one that you do, okay? So you might have to do it a few times, but send me the best recording you have and I'll look over it, give you some suggestions, and then send me your papers. And try to do it by this coming Sunday. So you have a week. You have plenty of time, okay? Okay, bye guys.